So this was the second part of the setup. And once both these steps are done, we can start using account coding functionality for the supplier invoices in account payable. So now we will see how we can initiate account coding. So for individual invoices, this can be initiated from the invoice sections menu. So once you have done all the setup as we discussed, under invoice sections, you would see there's a menu called account coding, and it would have all these options. So you can see that we have initiate, withdraw, resubmit, post complete. So for initiating the account coding, you can use the initiate option. So as soon as you initiate the account coding, based on the rules that we just defined in the BPM workflow, system will create a specific task for that specific invoice and then assign it to the user based on the rules you have defined. Right. So what we'll try to do now, we'll try to create an invoice in the system and then initiate it for account coding so that you know the whole process, how you can do it as well. I'm not giving any requester name currently because this instance has many users. So I've created a very basic invoice and I have removed the distribution set so the system doesn't get any distribution derived from the distribution set and distribution remain as null before initiating the invoice account coding. So let's save this. Right. Now we can see that we have an option for account coding under invoice section. I'll initiate the account coding. Okay, before initiating, I'll just show you what status is there. So when you click on this not validated status, you will see the status for validation for account coding and for approval. So currently we are interested in the account coding status, which shows required, right? So now I can initiate the account coding. And as soon as we initiate it, you can see that the status has changed from required to initiated, which means that system has tried to create a workflow task for this specific invoice for account coding, and now system will try to assign it to some user based on the rules that have been created. But as you can see, I have not defined any requester here. So system won't be able to assign it. So I'll just reassign it to another user that I have created and show you how it would look to the assignee user. Right. So you can see that system has created a workflow task for the invoice that we just created. So what I'll do is I'll reassign it to another user that I have created.
Uh, okay, just submitted. I just wanted to check, Vishal, like which person name it is showing in the end, like in the hierarchy. What does it shows? Or it just
In the view approval, you know,
Yeah.
not showing any history currently, but it will show you as to like if you have set up some rules, it will show you that okay, system has assigned to this and this person currently, and once you reassign, it will show the reassignment as well.
So Vishal, just one query if you don't mind. Like
Yeah.
this account coding approvals have been there like from the start of this AP, or it has been introduced recently? Like, is this a new feature?
No, it's not a new feature. So, like,
Okay.
if you need account coding, you need the rules as well to tell the system where to route the task. So, since the time account coding was introduced, this VPM workflow has been introduced as well. It's not a new feature.
Okay. And this account coding approvals are basically based on the distribution, right?
So these are like this is account coding workflow was introduced to enable users to enter the distribution on the invoice. So like if I am a account payable team member and I have received an invoice, but I don't know what distribution combination should I put it in if it's a non-PO match invoice. So what I'll do is I'll initiate the account coding and ideally based on the business unit and the like the business unit this invoice belongs to, system should route it to an appropriate user or team who should then be able to put on the distribution and we are able to validate the invoice for further processing. So the main goal of account coding functionality is to get distribution combination for non-PO matched invoices.
Okay. I got it. Thanks.
Yeah. Right.
Vishal,
So
if you want to default this distribution account string, do we have any other alternative? Instead of initiating this workflow, can we have any default account string that will be updated in invoice option or any other setup?
So if you don't want to use account coding, what you will need to do anytime you create a manual invoice or anytime you create invoices in Fusion without distribution combinations, you will have to define the distribution yourself. Like otherwise, the invoice won't be validated, right? So to create the accounting system needs accounting distribution, right? So uh, it depends on how you provide the distribution to the system. It can be via PO for PO match invoices. It can be like manually doing it, like the person who is creating the invoice can define the distributions as well, right? So, but account coding comes in where the person who is creating the invoice don't know what distribution combination they want to use, or they are not authorized to provide the distribution combination. Right? That depends on what organization we are working for and what are their business policies. So you definitely, if you are able to create an invoice, you are able to define distributions as well. It's not that you can't do it. It's based on the business process, how the organization follows or what business process organization follows. So my organization might have a policy that the account payable analyst, they don't need to enter a distribution combination. It needs to be handled by a separate team, right? So that might be a business policy or a business requirement. So in those cases, account coding comes in. But if you don't want to use account coding, you can very well define the distributions manually while creating the invoice. Or if you are importing invoices, let's say via spreadsheet, via PDI, you can define the distributions there as well.
Okay. Okay, Vishal. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Vishal, one question.
Mhm.
Meenakshi here. So, my question here is like, as you mentioned, like how this account coding thing works when we are creating a manual invoice, right? So, for
Yeah.
example, if we are doing this via integration, the invoice is coming via integration and we want to use this. Have you ever checked this functionality in integrations as well?
So while importing invoices via integrations, what we need to do is we need to keep the distributions blank. So while importing the invoice, system doesn't get any distribution. So then, and once the invoice are imported, it would be the same process as this, and it's So I have of course shown the manual way how you can initiate, but it like if you imagine not every invoice needs to be initiated like this. I'll cover further in the session how certain schedule processes work for account coding, and it's an automatic process basically. But what I showed earlier was just to show
Okay.
you like the status and so, but it is automated in usual day-to-day business processes.
So you are saying that when we import invoice, yes, we can keep the distribution blank and import the invoice, and we can
Yeah,
schedule the process on a daily basis or whatever time we want. Based on that, this
correct,
get created based on this setup what we are doing, right?
correct, correct.
Okay, thanks.
Alright, so the last step that I did was to reassign it to another user that I have access to. The reason I did this, so we have seen from the creator point of view as to what you need to do to initiate an invoice account coding workflow. Now we want to see it from the point of view of the assignee, the person who has received the task to approve or to put in the distribution. So I'll just log into that user. So this is the user that I assigned or reassigned the workflow task to, and we can see that this user has received a bell notification that this account coding workflow has been transferred to you. So let's open this. Right. So this is the view or this is the workflow that the assignee user will normally have. You have your total invoice amount, the supplier this invoice is for, invoice number, invoice date, details like who has created the invoice, the supplier side, the business unit, amount summary from invoice line. All these details are available. And now what action this user needs to take, they need to go into actions and say edit distribution. Like once they have clicked on edit distribution, you will see that the line that we defined on the invoice is available here, and there are no distribution for this line. So I'll just create a distribution. Let's take full amount here, but you might be knowing that each line can have multiple distribution where the total of distribution should match to the line amount. So I can have 4 different distribution for one single line as well. So once I've entered the distributions as required, I'll just save and close this. So after closing, you can see that I have the option to complete now. And once I click complete, the account coding workflow would get completed and invoice would return uh, to accounts payable module. So another option or other options, if you see, we have the option to view invoice. It would open up the invoice that this task workflow or workflow task belongs to, or you can return the task as well to the originator. If you have some queries or if you need some more clarifications or you want to, say that this invoice is invalid or so, the reason could be anything, but you can return the task to the originator as well. We will complete the task here. You can submit your comments or any attachment if you want to. Let's re-query this invoice. the previous status that we saw for account coding was initiated. And now once the assignee user has completed the account coding process, we can see that the account coding status has changed to complete. I'll try to validate the invoice. Right. So invoice has been validated, which means now this invoice can be processed further for payment processing or approval if approvals are configured. So this marks the end of account coding process, where the main output of the account coding process is to populate all the required distribution for all the lines on the invoice. Right. Now, one interesting fact about this is even though account coding is majorly used for non-PO matched invoices, how it can work or how it works in real scenarios as well. So let's say in your PO matched invoices, you have added a line, a freight line, let's say, right, which is not matched to a PO. And you have not defined any distribution combination for the same, nor in the, so we have a separate setup for freight expense where the system can default it from. And so there also account combination has not been defined. So in that case, when system tries to validate that invoice, that PO match invoice, it will see that the number of lines and the distributions available against those lines, they don't match because the freight line doesn't have any distribution. So in that case, also system will initiate the account coding process because it's not able to find distribution for a line, and we have enabled account coding. So to take it as a like in what cases account coding can be triggered, it would be in every case where a distribution is not available for a line, or like it may be a case like line is of $100 or £100 and distribution is not available for £100 like in full. So in all those cases, account coding will be triggered. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Vishal, just one thing. Now, let's say the person who was assigned to complete this account coding task, he did enter the distribution and things are done from his end. So once he completes this entering the distribution task, does this invoice goes back to the person who actually created this invoice? So is there any notification flow that the task has been completed, something like that, to notify the original person who created this invoice?
Yeah, that depends on how the notifications have been configured. So let me just do things. Yeah, definitely. So let me see if I have received it. So I initiated it for account coding. So I should have, yeah. So I have received a notification that account coding for this invoice has been completed. Yeah. So I mentioned all this in this document, so you can go through this. I'll just skip through to some of the points which I need to discuss. So the way we saw like how we can initiate the account coding process for any specific invoice, that very manual. So let's say if you are receiving even 100 invoice in a day, which is very less compared to the real scenario, people or organization receive thousands of invoices every day. So obviously you can't go in and initiate it manually. So what happens is usually the schedule process validate payables invoices. Whenever you trigger that or whenever we schedule that process, initiate invoice account coding workflow is a child process for validate payables invoices. And every time you start or you run validate payables invoices, initiate invoice coding workflow will run before the parent process. Why this is? Because until and unless all the lines in the invoice have proper distribution, system won't be able to validate the invoice like we just saw, right? So because of this, and to make it easier for users, whenever you run or schedule validate payables invoices, account coding workflow will be triggered for all the invoices where system sees that invoice coding will be required. So we don't need to do this manually for every invoice. This would be done automatically whenever you run the validate payable invoices. Or so usually what happens is validate payable invoices, it's scheduled at a regular interval, so it keeps on running, and invoices get initiated for account coding by the system itself. Right, and Oracle also provides the seeded report, which you can run by Payables workflow transaction listing job, and it will give you like what invoices are pending for account coding, what are rejected, and all those details are available in that seeded report as well.